table and join us. Yes, welcome. Yep. So if your team wanted to join you, grab some chairs. There are actually a few over there. Oh, great. Nice. And we're on submission page 671. Here you go.
371.
671. Page 671. Page 671.
Oh, yes.
So, Helen, 5 minutes. Welcome to you and your team, and I'll let you know when you've.
I've got some written copies of what I'm saying here.
Did you want to pass those out, or
Yes,
leave
I
them till later?
would pass them out, but they've been mixed up, so I have to just
Not
Can you-
collated.
wrong collated, yes. So if you'd like to collate them,
They've only got, what is there, 2 pages?
The 5 minutes
is
hasn't
that one
started
and
yet.
that one?
That one and that one. So we'll start going. Display.
Okay. So
Okay, so while that's being handed out, Helen, would you like to begin? And welcome to you and your team.
thank you. In mid-2020, the work on the development of the Whangamata Resource Recovery Centre stepped up to a new level. Discussions with our elected councillors and community board and Tcdc staff towards establishing the centre at the Whangamata transfer station are now underway. It will be a positive shift by Tcdc to enable more waste reduction measures to be available to people in Whangamata. Solid waste is a major council activity with costs for disposal rising rapidly. A logical move by the council will be to get in behind the Whangamata Resource Recovery Trust to promote and install as many initiatives as possible to reduce our waste stream and bring down the trash mountain. We will be seeking active collaboration between the existing Thames-Coromandel Centre, the Coromandel Town Gold Mine Reuse Centre, the proposed Whangamata facility in order to streamline this project. Supportive council decisions would lead to so many more opportunities to reduce, reuse and recover valuable used resources for the benefit of the entire Coromandel Peninsula. We look forward to an LTP decision which will enable the Trust to be part of a competent and cooperative approach to this growing environmental problem. There are many examples of successful waste recovery centres across New Zealand, and we have visited quite a lot. Every site format needs safe and logical traffic flows, spacious drop-off and storage facilities, and are easily accessible to the public to use regularly. We too must have the required infrastructure in place to capture the flow of recoverable waste. Priority recoverable items are well identified by knowledgeable and watchful centre operators, and our aim is to keep the consumer well informed of recycle trends and reuse technologies. We know which priorities items need immediate attention for diversion: food waste, construction waste, e-waste, and packaging waste are some examples, all of which require spacious handling and storage facilities to deal with recycled items effectively and safely. We urge the Council to tackle this waste problem now and enable the Whangamata Resource Recovery Trust to begin without delay. No halfway measures, no lukewarm commitments. The time is now and the need is immediate. And on another subject within the plan, and that is 101 Lindsay Road, Whangamata. I just want to point out in a sort of timeline, an action line of what's been going on there. This is the last non-reserve land holding left in public ownership in Whangamata. That land was gifted to the people by the Williamson family. The comprehensive community hub proposal emerged around 2015. A 2016 Whangamata public meeting in the Memorial Hall and petition showed great community support. Multiple community groups are prepared to fundraise externally to get it built. And I've seen around 5-6 groups, all very committed. It's an opportunity to provide a broad range of social services to the Whangamata residents, and many of these residents are the working hub of the town. It keeps the town going for people who are visiting and their family in one place without high market rents. The 2021 LTP submission choices seem to ignore all of the requests and hard work put in already. Our councillors and community board have repeatedly shown their support for the project over at least 5 years. It is our last piece of land available to the community, so do not sell.
Yeah. Thanks to Helen. Are there any questions, Helen?
Have we used our time?
No.
My question is, has any thought been given of an organisation like the Men's Shed co-locating with the transfer station?
Absolutely, yes.
Good.
We're cooperating, collaborating with all sorts of groups who will be having interest in reducing waste.
My second question is in regard to Lindsay Road.
Yep.
So I've had submitters today advised that it's taken under the Public Works Act, and we've also heard that gifted by the Williamson family. They'd be two quite different things. So I think, are you aware of which one is right?
Well, it's been debated for about the last 30 years. So who knows which one is right? But
Okay.
essentially come from the Williamson family.
Yeah, depending on the decision of council, the due process to be followed.
I think with all due respect, Your Worship, it's a valid question, because if the proof can be provided and gifted by the Williamson family, that changes perspective.
Okay.
It's a question always thrown back at us, and often it's kind of like buying a bit of time, we feel, because you should have that information already, because it's been before the community and the council so long. You should have that information.
Thank you, Terry.
Thanks for the presentation. Are you doing any discussion around food scraps and recovery?
We've actually begun a trial for a swap a bottle kitchen plant waste service. It involves a 5 kilo lidded bottle. People bring, they put it on their bench top.
Yeah.
When it's full, they just take it to a swap location. They pick up an empty one, leave the full one there, and we divert that plant food waste to a compost heap and worm farms, and then take the empty ones back for reuse. And we've had about 4 months trial, very good feedback. Each bottle fill is about 5 kilos of food waste, and we've probably done nearly 3,000 kilos of food waste already. Yeah.
Any other questions? Thank you very much, Helen.
Yeah.
You and your team.
Thank you.
I just wanted to,
Sorry,
the Pest team
Pardon?
I'm part of this team.
You may be part of the team, but you're only allotted 5 minutes to speak.
Has it been used?
Kathleen
Yes, it has
was,
been used.
Okay,
Kathleen was the separate speaker.
yeah.
That's all fine. You only had 5 minutes to speak, Helen,
Yeah,
and you've used 5 minutes. I'm sorry.
you know, but she put her name down separately to speak.
I beg your pardon?
She put her name down.
She's got her own submission?
Where is your submission?
No,
Sorry.
I haven't got my own submission, it's on,
You just put your name down to speak.
yes, I put my name down to speak.
What submission?
I only need 10 seconds.
Okay, let's have it 10 seconds.
10 seconds?
Okay, I've been to the local area school and I'm very interested in collaborating with the trust. And there's a new teacher there who's concerned with recycling. And also, they want a pottle in their staff room. So there you go.
Thank you.
We're moving through all the streams.
Okay, thank you.
Cool.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
For the lady,
Could you please turn off your videos until you are speaking?
Okay, videos, please.
Thank you.
Okay,
Kate?
Kate, sorry. Can you turn off your video? Who's that? I'm going to go straight to, I'm going to invite Matthew Cooper and Bill Cooksley on behalf of Sport Waikato, who've highly arrived early, so I appreciate that.
That's okay, no worries.
So welcome Matthew Cooper, who does an excellent job with Sports Waikato, and to Bill Cooksley, and likewise, great job.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Sandra, and councillors, thanks very much for our allotted time on behalf of Sport Waikato. Firstly, I want to congratulate Thames-Coromandel District Council on a significant proposed investment in this year, or this long-term plan related to not only sport but active recreation and play coming through inside the submission. So I just wanted to acknowledge that. Also, I want to thank Tcdc for the ongoing support of Sport Waikato, particularly when we've actually reset ourselves as an organisation and focus. And we're delighted to have Bill Cooksley as the new regional connector that also looks has a good lens over Hauraki and Matamatapiako as well in this world. So Bill's well known to council as well. I take it as read. We very much hope we can continue this partnership between the council and Sport Waikato now that we've got very clear focus. I also want council to know that Sport New Zealand is very heavily focused in supporting us as well as Tcdc in things like peer reviews of any type of facility. Also a person by the name of Steve Bramley might be known to you as well, who is the person that we use to engage, if required, to look at prospective opportunities around future facility provision here in Tcdc as well. On the specific, I'll take it as read, there are a few things that we've acknowledged, but specifically, the Thames sub-regional pool replacement, we do support this. It is a priority in the Waikato Regional Active Spaces Plan, and we need to consider future proofing of this asset given shortage of indoor aquatic space in the district and surrounds and the wider Waikato region, particularly around this part of the region. The Thames Sports Precinct. Sport Waikato supports this project and suggests it be moved into the must-do projects, with a priority being an investigation of relocation of clubs from Rhodes Park. So we just wanted to signal that in our submission, that we think that's important, and particularly with alongside the proposed aquatic centre to create a community sports recreation hub here for this part of the Coromandel Peninsula. The Mercury Bay Sports Park should be shifted to the must-do, was identified in District Plan as number 2 priority. We believe it's one that needs careful consideration in the deliberations. Just a quick one on fitness equipment. It's coming through not only in this submission, but it's coming through in a few. Sport Waikato suggests community consultation around this investment. as there could be better uses of funding based on participation trends and community appetite. Only 32% of adults use exercise equipment in the Tcdc, and that's through Active New Zealand data, a 7-day period according to that data. And this doesn't feature at all with youth. So 32% doesn't feature. The top activity is walking. So community consultation, I'm not saying no, but community consultation could uncover a low appetite for outdoor fitness equipment, meaning the investment could be better spent on something else.
So we just don't have the usage here, is what you're saying?
No.
No, thank you.
Just that was the fact through Active New Zealand data. So, Mayor Sandra, that's our submission.
Oh, was it? Yeah. Oh, goodness me. Bill, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Sorry.
No, I've just come along to support Matthew, really, and just once again, I suppose thank TCDC for their support of not only Sport Waikato's work, but certainly from a personal perspective, my work as well, and the open relationship that TCDC operate under in terms of our connection. So that's great. Thank you.
Cool, good on you. Thank you. Any questions? Terry?
Yeah, I just like your opinion on the recent cycling explosion and how that reflects with Sport Waikato. Have you got a new vision for it, or you just support it?
Absolutely, Terry. We've got a very strong, we're doing quite a bit of work with bikes in schools, so we're starting now. We were a bit behind the 8 ball, but now we're getting a lot of schools. Now, bikes in schools philosophy, Terry, do you know about that? So bikes in schools now there is an outfit out of Wellington, out of Hawke's Bay, and we're starting to grow those. So the provision, it's interesting, when you and I grew up, we didn't have to have that education, I suppose, but we do now. I think the cycling provision particularly is starting to become far more important in terms of the global climate and certainly as a recreation opportunity as well. So we seem to be building that. I know there's some very good tracks around this particular part of the world.
And with the electric bikes, will the age people can sort of participate in a way that gets them out and about?
Yeah, I'm all okay with e-bikes. I'm not there yet, but I'm all okay with them because I think that they at least we've got people working. You have to work on an e-bike, but it just gives you that little bit of extra. I probably needed one on K1 a couple of years ago when I was going over the Whangamata Hill.
Can you see the ACC statistics slowly rising?
In terms
or should I say rapidly rising?
In terms of cycling?
Yes.
So, yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Billy,
I think just to add to that, in terms of long-term planning, it's really important that we look at our connections as well to make it easier for people to cycle, and in terms from a safety aspect. A lot of adults or parents will not allow their kids to cycle on local roads because they feel they're unsafe. So potentially in the long term, looking at those connections and how we can make that safe.
We've got a committed person on our peak and our staff as well. It's directed to cycling.
We've got a committed one here as well. Have you got you're in discussions? Do you have discussions with the Whangamata multi-sports team that operate within the forestry?
The Ridges Mountain Bike Park. Yes, yeah, we have had some connection with them in the past.
Very impressive. Okay, well, thank you very much, both of you. I really appreciate it.
You go the teams.
Yeah.
Kate, can you hear me? We'll take you now, so then you can turn off your video after you're finished.
Have you got?
Okay.
Yes, we have. We
can hear you. Thank you.
Fantastic. Okay, well, look, just thanks for this opportunity to present to this. You'll see our submission there, maybe. And just to say, we really do value the collaborations that are going on with the TCDC up here and Forest and Bird in the Coromandel area. Particularly, I guess we should mention the Waitate Bay planting at Turahina there, which has been a great success, big community participation in that, and the Long Bay Tucks Bay Reserve collaboration that's happening with great results. Everyone's involved. The main issue that Forest and Bird is looking at in terms of the LTP is the lack of any mention of the biodiversity strategy. And in our opinion, that should sit front and centre and be a core issue. It's really critical for the Coromandel Peninsula's tourism aspect, etc. And we don't see any mention of the biodiversity strategy and no linkages in the LTP. Just a quick quote from the biodiversity strategy. It says, the council is not aware of the state of Coromandel's biodiversity and only hold limited biodiversity information, and there is a lack of certainty and protection around native vegetation. So I'm just sort of wanting to point that out to you and wondering kind of if we've missed something on that, but it does seem a critical omission if it is an omission. We're aware too that there's no budget line for animal pest control in Tcdc reserves. I've just been made aware of this actually. And there's no mention of this in the LTP. So currently Forest and Bird's applying for funding, and we've gained a lot of funding from different sources for doing trapping, and we've got a trapping whole line from Colville Harbour right down to the Coromandel Harbour, and the Tucks Bay, Long Bay Reserve right through to Kiko Whakarere Bay. But we've become aware recently, and we've had people contacting us at Forest and Bird about a large piece of Tcdc reserve at the back of Waitate Bay, which is being described as the sort of seed source for the whole area, which has no trapping in it whatsoever and no pest plant eradication plan for it. So, I mean, we might try to apply for funding for that, but it seems like, you know, if that could be part of the long-term plan, that would be really, really useful. Don't think we mentioned it, but just want to do a quick mention of opposition to council paying 1.9 million to change the roading scenario at the Takuma main highway junction there. Provincial Growth Fund, as far as we're aware, have provided 19 million for the upgrade of the Sugarloaf. There's issues in there we're concerned about, sort of around reclaiming a bit of the harbour for a car park for recreational boaties. Seems a little bit short-sighted in view of the state of the Hauraki fishery. Yeah, especially as knowing that the commercial guys are currently taking out, I mean, the recreational fishers are taking out twice as much snapper from the Gulf as the commercial fishers these days. So it's just something to be aware of. And lastly, Forest and Bird would like the council to be working towards protection of the small remnants that are left of coastal wetland, and especially those that are coastal reserves. And Forest and Bird's been involved for many years in the McGregor Bay wetland, and we're concerned about council's current support for an unconsented gate at McGregor Bay, and feel concerned really that the council shouldn't spend any more ratepayers' money trying to stop natural tidal flow going into that area. So yeah, that's me, and thanks.
Thank you. Are there any questions of Kate? Moving on, Tony.
I know on page 767, in terms of Matarangi, you do not support proceeding with that. We've heard that that land as it is supports our bird life, flight paths and other life.
Okay.
If it was to go into private ownership and it was developed, potentially that would go. Do you have a comment on that?
If it was to go into, yeah, so remind me of that. That's council looking at buying the golfing area there at Matarangi from the golf club.
And the study I'm really referring to, but that land supports an awful lot of bird life and flight paths and other creatures. If it was to be developed and turned into high density housing or something, then potentially all that life would be affected. So what your comment on that is?
Oh, well, my comment would always be that if there's an issue of providing space for a habitat for birds, of course, I'm sure that Forest and Bird would be supporting that. Yeah, I mean, one of the other issues we've brought up with council up here is, I mean, suddenly, or maybe we're just more aware of it, hundreds of godwits actually in the Coromandel estuaries right up here being noted.
Okay, I'll see if there are any more questions. Are there any questions? Are there any more questions? There being none, thank you, Kate.
Thanks,
We'll
Kate.
move
Thanks
on.
very much.
Right, the next speaker is going back to the programme, Julie Fox, but I understand she's not here. So we move on to Juliana Treadwell. Is she here? She's not here. So we'll move on to Hannah Hall. She's not here. So, Peter, pardon? Sorry. Peter Schmuck-Cole. Is it here? Sorry, Peter.
That's okay.
Page 446.
Not the first person who mispronounced from last time, but that's how it is. You're not the first person who mispronounced.
Thank you very much for understanding the protocols, the process. I really appreciate that.
That's okay. Thank you very much.
So what page are we on?
447.
Right, I'll pick from my written submission the waste minimisation aspect. And I'm of the firm belief that all actions we take have to be viewed and judged by the relevance they have to decreasing our greenhouse gas footprint. It is well known that waste is a major source of climate gases. In the consultation document, there is no evidence of an ambitious waste minimisation strategy at the district level. I submit that the Council develops and adopts an ambitious waste minimisation strategy and programme properly resourced, which is also implemented at all Council assets and adhered by all Council staff. Walk the talk. During my time as caretaker at Parawa School from 2017 to 2019, after 16 years of being a teacher there, I implemented a stringent recycling and waste reduction program. Within one term, the school achieved an 80% reduction of the amount of waste sent to the landfill. Now, how was this achieved? By reducing, first of all, the size of the rubbish bins across the school. Secondly, having dedicated recycling bins. Thirdly, dedicated compost bins. Fourthly, incentives. In this case, it was best class Windsor pizza lunch. And repeated regular education. And I fondly remember the Friday of 1 week when actually the waste of the whole day fitted in a 10-litre bucket for the whole school. The landfill waste. While a school is not a district, the approach could be adopted so that it fits the purpose. A special focus needs to be put on reducing food waste, and I was glad to hear that just before, that this is happening somewhere already. There's a group of people in Thames who has done a lot of groundwork in that area, and which I suppose will have submitted to LTP as well. And I'm happy to provide contact information should this not be the case. Of course, the cooperation with existing groups that work on waste minimisation, for example, the Seagull Centre, would be only beneficial. And I submit that the Council puts a focus on food waste reduction and elimination in the waste stream. The Council is in a unique position to regulate and incentivise behavioural change, make a step in the direction of reducing climate gases, and save a lot of ratepayer money on the way. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you. Thank you, Peter. Okay. Any questions of Peter?
Very good. Thank you.
Appreciate that. Thank you. Then the next submitter is Kenzie Gray on behalf of the Koharanga River Trail Advocacy Group. That's page 837.
Get myself sorted. Thank you.
So lovely.
Kia ora tātou, good afternoon. My name is Kenzie Gray and I'm here today representing a group that we've called ourselves the Karuma River Trail Advocacy Group. So firstly, thank you for allowing us the opportunity to verbally submit to the long-term plan. Who are we? Who is this advocacy group? Well, I'll start by telling you what we're not. We're not roading experts, we're not cycleway experts, we're not project managers for local authorities, we're not experts in grading funding for projects from local government or broader governmental authorities, and we've in fact got no funding behind us. But we are a group who feels really passionately about the need for a safe and dedicated cycle walkway along the Koharanga River. We're Thames locals, many of us live up the valley, we're ratepayers, we're the end user of council spending, we're small to medium-sized business owners, we're keen outdoor enthusiasts, and we're actually some mums who hatched a plan at a summer barbecue about 18 months ago. And we're residents who see a better way forward for our local community. So although we're actually a really small core group, we've realised through running a local advocacy campaign that we do actually have wider support from our community to drive this concept forward. And to that point, this is what nearly 700 signatures look like. But I'll give you a bit more on that later because I'd like to give you a little bit of the feedback from some of these signatories. So what are we asking? We're asking that the council consider our proposal for a safe and dedicated cycle walkway along the Karuma River. We believe that the proposal actually demonstrates that there's existing demand and there's also potential for some very real economic safety and health benefits to the Thames Township and the local communities. So we'd really like to congratulate the Thames Community Board for their work on the Thames Visitor and Promotion and Optimisation Plan, which has been an ongoing piece of work. So of particular synergy, we note that there are 6 focus areas, 2 of particular synergy, and we believe that the council, if they endorse our plan, will be sort of endorsing the strategic vision of the community board. So to remind you of the 2 focus areas, the first is optimised and walking cycle experiences, and the second is focus area 4, which is in fact leveraging off and developing new synergies with the Koharanga Valley. And it seems through our investigations that despite some of the initial enthusiasm to focus on this area of the Koharanga Valley, implementation has dwindled somewhat, and we'd really like to reinvigorate this. So the community board through their work have shown that there's clearly potential to deliver a return on investment for the community. That's what they've identified. But that's fantastic. So there's bang for your buck if you do invest in this area. But let's not forget it's actually also about the local community. Like the Māori proverb, he tangata, he tangata, he tangata, it is the people, it is the people, and it is the people. So what's our vision? We'd like to see a safe and dedicated commuter and leisure cycle walkway to Thames Township and further afield, including Kopu. This is a real connector piece. It means less near misses for those of us driving the Koharanga Road with small children, walking up to swimming holes and coming around the bend with cyclists on dodgy corners. It's another leg extension or a route for the existing Hauraki Rail Trail, which extends options for the community and brings tourists into our township. It's a return circuit that offers a wider range of activities, and it also opens up that connection between the Koharanga Valley and the township. So as many of you will know, there are lots of important activities that many outside of Thames may not know exist up the Koharanga Valley, the pinnacles, all of the huts, tramping walkways, canyoning. We feel that by considering the proposal, there are 2 stages to the proposal, which I hope you will have in front of you. A shorter first stage to implement, the first 3 kilometres from the booms to what we know as the Swing Bridge swimming hole. We see that as being essential and could be implemented by council in the next 3 years. And then there's a much bigger opportunity, which is to cross the river and join up to the other side of the Karanga River and go through to the Hauraki Rail Trail. So thank you for considering our proposal. We'd love to work together, we'd love to collaborate. We just need the assistance to move this forward. Thank you.
Thank you. And questions, and I've got one. Then Robin, then Terry. Me, Robin, then Terry. Firstly, what sort of dollars are you looking at?
Well, this, Sandra, does go back to my point when I initially stated this, that we are actually just a group of local advocates who have very little experience in this area. Right. This is where we would need the assistance. We have suggested, based on what information we can establish, that to complete stage 1, there would be an estimated $100,000 commitment to scope the stage. So we would really be needing the council to help to actually scope this and decide whether they can.
My second question would be, is there a sufficient width on that short run to the public toilets on the side of the Karanga? Is there a sufficient width on that right-hand side of the road as you go up?
We've been advised by those that we believe.
You have a look at yourself just to double check?
Yeah, we go up and down that road.
Okay, okay, right, Robin, don't you worry.
Well, my question was, obviously this is very ambitious and it's very attractive, and I wondered whether, were council to endorse this and help with the stage 1, do you think that it would be competitive as, for national funding for stage 2?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. So I think we put that in the actual 2-page proposal, is that we would see. So that's why you've got a lot of proposals in front of you, that actually the second stage we would suggest could be done with local fundraising, water, government funding, and some Tcdc, Hauraki Rail Trail. And that's where the advocacy group could support.
Oh, sorry, okay.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Cool. Can I just make one comment? I didn't read any of the statements from people, the 700 year signatures. I'd love you please to take a look, but there's a lot of themes here very similar to what we've talked about today about desires, needs and wants.
I think I'll just make a comment that definitely that stretch round booms, there needs to be some protection.
The sun, yeah. I was just saying, driving that in the summer when the sun's, you've got sunstrike and you've got kids walking to that swimming hole, it's pretty nerve-wracking. Yeah, you get a lot of
appreciate that.
Community to work on that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Tangata, we say $8. Rightio, next we have Linda Dacey. Linda Dacey. She's coming, and it's code 690. Yep.
Page 690.
Thank you very much, Linda.
Thank you. I'm making a submission specifically against the Nice to Have project in the LTP, namely the Whangamata boardwalk extensions. While it's commendable that the council and the CEO state in the LTP consultation document that they prefer a no-frills LTP, we've yet to see just what is formulated post-consultation, and it's probably inevitable that some nice-to-have projects will be elevated to the final LTP produced. I hope that in your deliberations on these various projects you think long and hard about the $2.9 million for Whangamata boardwalk extensions that's currently nice to have. I don't share the.
Sorry. Just a question before the submitters left. Would you mind if I?
No.
Do you have any additional information around your proposal?
No, that's all we have.
Oh, okay.
There's all the signatures.
Thank you. My apologies.
It was great, wasn't it? Sorry. I hope that in your deliberations on these projects you think long and hard about the 2.9 million that Whangamata boardwalk extensions has labelled against it. I don't share the opinion put forward by some elected members and Tcdc staff that this project needs to be included as a must-have in the LTP 21 to 31. And I quote because future community boards need to be able to do what they want. I think that this should be looked at really, really seriously. You've all, councillors, previously received from 2020 a document that I put forward to you, summarising 7 areas of concern I have about the Boardwalk project in total. I notice heads are nodding. I did put here in my notes, if you want me to jog your memory, I'll read it through again. Subsequent to that, a year ago, Councillor Gottlieb at the annual plan time made a point of drawing your attention to the fact that if you go into the dunes, and I'm paraphrasing him, but I think these are actually his exact words, if you go into the dunes, you'll end up in court for years. Sadly, I think he's right, and that will be another expense that the Whangamata ratepayers are going to have to bear. We come to the SMP. The expectation of the SMP project is that by 2023, there'll be a clear, agreed plan in place, giving everyone a full understanding of the physical and financial implications of what we're facing. I'm hoping that in conjunction with my submission, not that they're related to me at all, but I found very informative, their submission to you on just taking a wait and see approach with anything in the coastal zone. I'm also a bit concerned where there's an encouragement for new growth and development as a priority, rather than getting our current environment into a sustainable position. And I make the point that straight GDP style measures are useless without environmental and social wellbeing factored in. In the past it was GDP all the way, but there are more things these days that governments and down through the various levels of government have to think about. At present, we don't have full environmental or social impact assessments for this project. And it's not possible for either the public or the decision makers to they must by law follow a certain criteria and answer specific questions. It would be really good if those could be done. The $2.9 million for the boardwalk extensions June section, as printed in your consultancy document, is made up of $1.2 million to cover the cost of the overrun of stage 1, being therefore for stages 2 and 3, which will complete the original project from the Esplanade to Hunt Road. This $1.7 million in years 30-31 is for stage 4, a fact that will come as a great surprise to 99% of the ratepayers of our ward. Most of them are still asking why we've been paying rates on the original first 3 stages for the past 2 years. Pardon?
1 minute.
When even stage 1 has yet to appear. Money for nothing is a phrase that I hear often, and it's not positive. You really do need to accept that there's a problem with this project, and rather than continue to ignore that problem, fix it and make sure it doesn't happen again. So I'm asking that you do not include the 2.9 million or any lesser amount, such as the 1.2 million that's now being requested, and instead people who are competent focus on the things that still have to be done before this proposal comes to the table again.
Thank you. Are there any questions of Linda? Tony?
I'm just going on page 692, you support the social centre implementation.
That sadly is not what I wrote. I wrote the Seagull Centre. The Seagull Centre doesn't appear to have any money. I suppose it's hidden in OPEX in the plan, but I do support that. And as we were asked to give comments on waste management, I wanted to register my support. I don't want you to think I'm opposed to everything.
No, just the social centre is replaced with Seagull.
Seagull.
Righto. I have no further question now.
Any other questions? There being none, thank you very much, Jeff, for your submission. We'll take Rick Belford, page 582, followed by Rod Ingalls. So we just go with Rick at the moment.
Kia tatou.
Yeah.
Welcome. Nice to see you all.
Yeah.
I'm here to speak to my submission.
582.
Thank you. With a couple of hats on. I sit on the National Trail Fund Advisory Board, which reviews proposals from all over the country for particularly mountain biking, but often cycling and walking projects combined. And so I see a lot of what's going on around New Zealand. And I also, in my parks role previously, was representing council in the Waikato Trails Network Advisory Committee. So we saw in that each of the councils in the Waikato district and their level of support and planning around community cycling, walking combinations. And so the first part of my submission highlighted that in that context, it was quite glaring that TCDC didn't have a walking and cycling strategy for the district. And Waipara District Council would make an excellent example if you wanted to see a similar sized and low ratepayer base council producing one of those, which was excellent and became a foundation for the Waikato Trails Network Advisory Committee to see how council could dovetail into the broader regional trail network and support of tourism and walking and cycling as a quality of life component to that district. And so my first recommendation is that walking and cycling strategy be included in the LTP as a job to do. We are lagging behind in this district across the country, as well as particularly the Waikato region as a district that doesn't have one that's current. So that was the first one. And the second part of my submission was in support of the previous speakers who were very keen to see some support around the Koharanga Loop Trail. You might recall before I joined council, I was hired as a consultant to look at all the different trail development opportunities around the district, and that was one that had amongst the highest support in the community. So I strongly recommend that be given some priority in the LTP, both in the feasibility side of it, as well as a potential CapEx contribution over the years ahead in the 10-year plan. Because of the numerous aspects have already been spoken to, so I don't need to repeat any of those, about the value to the community for safe cycling in particular, and getting those school kids to Parawai and other schools in town from the valley, as well as tourists and visitors and recreationists, community members up the valley safely, and it's got huge potential. So one of the things that I would recommend is hardwiring in a sum of money, and I've supposed 100K as a starting point in each of the years of the current LTP as a base for helping those projects get going. And know from being in council that if it's not as a line item in the budget, it's very difficult to compete for funds that are relatively unallocated. So having a line item for cycling and walking trail development in the LTP is one of the best strategies that council can have to get these projects done in the feasibility side, as well as supporting them as a CapEx contribution, either directly or as part of council's works plan, and that will really send a signal both to the community that walking and cycling safety and recreational enjoyment is part of the scene of this council, as well as it gives the council great leverage when it comes to matching funds from other external sources. If councils, and I've seen this all over the country, don't put in a contribution, it makes it extremely hard for the community group or other party to gain the kind of traction they need for extracting external funding from other grant sources. So you really need to have some skin in the game to help these projects get going. And you've done that and extremely well in other situations. Whangamata Ridge Riders and the Coromandel Mountain Bike Park has shown. And now we see mountain bikers heading up the coast road, which we hardly ever saw before the Coromandel Mountain Bike Park was put into place. So that's all I would like to say, and thanks for the opportunity to come in today and submit and speak to it.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions of Rick? Right, Martin, then Terry. So is that report still around somewhere?
The Karuma Valley, yeah, it's in the council's system, so I have a draft copy, but it's not complete, so.
It should be there.
In ECM.
Yeah, we've had significant stuff on that, including down at the GBD with the community, etc., etc.
Yep.
So, yeah.
Information's there.
Yeah, Rick, enjoyed your presentation. You seem connected around these funding areas. Have you know, the right tracks into additional funding options?
Absolutely. Yeah,
you're about.
Well connected. I act as an advisor to groups on how to obtain funding through the National Cycleways Program, through the Trail Fund's own internal funding, and through all the other connections there are that are available.
So anyone know?
You're involved with the multi-sports park people at Whangamata?
I've given them advice, so I'm not directly involved as a volunteer.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm
Any other
volunteering locally with the Walkway Club.
Yeah. Very good. There'd be none, thank you very much, Rick.
That's really good. Yeah, appreciate it.
Okay, we now have Rod Ingles via Microsoft Teams. Rod. So you can unclick mute and video. Are you with us? Yay.
Hi there.
Hello. Welcome.
Oh, thank you for having me. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, in 5 minutes, I'll let you know when you're headed
Okay, sure, kick it off. I'm sorry I can't be there in person. I'm speaking around the Matarangi property. I've and our family have owned a beach house property at Matarangi for over 20 years, which we use often, and it's now used by my wife and I and our children and their partners and grandchildren. I'm also one of the shareholders in Matarangi Land Holdings Limited, who are the owners of the golf course at the moment. I'm not a director of the company, so this submission is made independent from Matarangi Land Holdings Limited and made purely on behalf of our family. So, from the very early days in its development, Matarangi was intended to be exciting, and it would set a new standard for community amenities, community engagement, and create an asset and a sustainable environment that would be wonderful for the district and for the whole of the Coromandel Peninsula. I was first introduced to Matarangi as an area to buy land for our family by a guy called Howard Patterson. Howard was a visionary investor in Dunedin, where we both went to university.
I knew Howard.
Oh, you knew him? Yeah, so yeah. Quite a guy. And as I just said, there's a little bit of background. He kicked off several tech, property and business developments, including A2 Milk. Unfortunately, died back in 2003. And he was an early investor in the Matarangi development, and subsequently Matarangi moved on to other developers who did not have the same vision and holistic goals. He talked of the effect of the early version of what was going to happen to Matarangi, and it would be a development of a wonderful community setting with open spaces, marine side reserves, integrated walk and cycle ways, and a beautiful Bob Charles designed golf course. These would provide a stunning community-friendly environment that would be enjoyed by all residents and visitors and the surrounding communities for generations to come. I won't go into the detailed history of how we have got to the position we have come to now with the golf course, because I think it's been well covered. It's clear that some of the early vision was potentially and partially undermined by subsequent developers whose failings are well documented. But it is not too late to save the vision for Matarangi and retain a great asset for the Coromandel Peninsula. There's a lot of evidence today of how community space and golf courses can work together to create wonderful property environments that enhance the areas where they exist and benefit the whole surrounding province and environment. Matarangi should be seen as an enhancing asset for the whole of the Coromandel Peninsula, as well as improving the rateable value of properties in the town and the enjoyment of the area for all those that live there or visit. Matarangi was among the early developments of this kind, but today the concept has been adopted and is being repeated all over the country. Some examples. In Queenstown and Wanaka Lakes District, where there are already 8 golf courses, some of them famous, with surrounding well-integrated residential developments, there are 3 more courses planned today. These all have active council support and are seen as great assets for the community and the district. Up at Mangawai Heads, north of Auckland, a new golf course is built, rated in the top 10 in the world, and 2 more are planned and under development. And so the list goes on. They are creating assets for the communities to enjoy and which also attract local and international visitors. I put in brackets there, about to return after with COVID vaccines. They invigorate the whole district and businesses in the area. The Coromandel, as I'm sure we all appreciate, is one of the most visited and enjoyed environments in New Zealand, Aotearoa, and has some wonderful environments to be enjoyed by all. Matarangi is one of those. As you have heard in relation to Matarangi, it has suffered latterly at the hands of greedy developers, one in particular, who wanted to convert the zoning of the golf course to open space, from open space to residential. This has no doubt led to the cooperation between the council and the property developers and the Ratepayers Association being somewhat undermined and some of the protection covenants being lost. Some of the residents have now stepped in and own the golf course, bowling club and associated assets with the intention of maintaining them as long-term, valuable, whole of community assets. They intend to be aligned with what is in the best interest of Matarangi, the community, and the whole of the Coromandel.
Thank you.
I'm just about finished. This response to buy the land was in order to maintain the assets for the long term, with great community involvement and with the hope of finding a way that it could be financially sustainable.
Thank you, Rob.
I was just going to say, how can this be achieved? Just the main point. I'll just summarise it. It can be achieved with a modest funding from Tcdc to help the community with a targeted rate. And I think that targeted rate can be given to the golf club, the community group, to keep those clubs running and breaking even, or doing a little better than that. It's not something for the faint-hearted, but it can be achieved if we work together.
Thank you. Are there any questions of Rod? There being none, thank you, Rod. We appreciate that.
No questions. Does that mean it was that boring?
We've had a few, Rod. Thank you. Do you want to send through your extra presentation?
Yeah, I've sent it through.
If you could.
Anna's got it.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Oh, Anna's got it, right? Thank you. Is Maggie Johnson available? No, she's not available. We now have Joy Robinson, please.
Okay, she said she'd hand them out to you all. Thanks.
Here on page 770. Joy, yes, please. Thanks, Rod.
Mayor and Councillors, thank you very much for this opportunity. I was here before once with the Wentworth Valley Road, and I would like to assure you that the health and well-being of the citizens in Whangamata have greatly improved because of that asset we now have. And it's the health and well-being of the citizens that I'm more concerned about, though I know you people have to balance budgets as well. The first thing I'd like to talk about is the waste management. Very tricky problem. We in Whangamata are often left with bags of garbage strewn all over the side of the road after a long weekend by people who leave the garbage bag out. Now, what can we do? We can't stop the seagulls, and people don't stop their own dogs. So maybe there should be a law only allowing 24 hours sitting on the sidewalk for garbage bags and a fine if it's not improved. Something like that. Something has to be done because it's not good. The other thing about garbage or rubbish collection that I want to talk about is recycling. We in Whangamata have noticed that Thames, which is the manufacturing branch of the New World grocery store, is increasingly wrapping up its produce in predetermined plastic pouches. Are these plastic pouches recyclable? I would like to know how anybody could go and verify that, because it's very wrong. Pam are putting all their packages out in unrecyclable plastic. And what I would suggest, the other part of recycling is education. We have a large number of farmers markets and outdoor summer fairs, which not only the locals but all the visitors attend. And if we had a group of enthusiastic, educated young people with a hands-on display about what garbage is recyclable, what is acceptable, what to do with it, there we would not only just reach the local people, but we will perhaps be able to instill some sense of environmental responsibility in our neighbours, in our visitors as well. They all go to the farmers markets. I would strongly suggest some sort of education program about what needs to be done about recycling. The other thing that I want to talk about is making money out of our visitors. I've been thinking you can leave Auckland or Hamilton with a tank full of gas, tour the Coromandel and go back before you fill your tank full of gas. Where is the record that that gas has been spent on Coromandel roads? Our roads need lots of repair. We need to get as much money as we can from what is our due from the users of the roads. Now, COVID-19, we would love to have put toll booths at the end of each road and charge people for coming. We can't do that. But we have to make sure that we are receiving from the petrol tax our valid amount concerning the number of visitor cars that come into our community. So we need a good record of that, those things on the roadside or whatever. That's another thing I wanted to talk about. The other one is, of course, with our visitors, we don't want to make them pay just to park on the side of the road or something, because they contribute to all the businesses in our downtown areas that help the businesses last the drought of winter. And these businesses are the money makers in our towns. These are the ones who pay the taxes and dues and who pay people's wages. So we need to help our visitors patronise our own local businesses. Freedom camping, passé, absolutely archaic. Each community needs to have a municipal campground with a trailer park where fees are paid to plug in or do whatever they want. All the trailer parks that are parked on anywhere must pay to use the facilities that the community provides. Another thing is the Matarani, or the land at Lindsay Road in Whangamata. That land is a Whangamata asset, and it should and it should remain Whangamata responsibility. And just like I would like to say Matarangi is a Matarangi asset, and it should remain Matarangi's responsibility. We would be very grateful for a little bit of help in putting a roof on our swimming pool. The citizens of Whangamata campaigned hard to provide the finances for that themselves. We would hate to think that if we get a little bit of money from you to put a roof on it, to help put a roof on it, that would be kind of like blackmail for us to kind of help you put a big pool here. We're not interested in that. So,
thank you, Joy.
I think that's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joy. Are there any questions of Joy?
Thanks, Joy.
There being none, thank you, Joy.
Thank you.
Appreciate you taking the time to come in.
Thank you.
We now have Paul Cook's on Teams.
It's Paul Cook.
Paul Cook, I beg your pardon. We just had a Bill Cooksey, Paul. Paul.
Yeah, hi guys. Is my camera working now?
Yes. So you're doing your first submission first, 371?
Sorry, say again?
You have 2 submissions.
Yeah, no, I just combined it into one. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Welcome.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for the opportunity. I'm sorry about my supine position, but I had an operation on my knee yesterday, so I have to keep it up. My apologies. So just quickly, I'm Paul Cook. I'm treasurer of the Apito Bay Ratepayers Association. I've been a ratepayer since 1995. I've been involved with OBRA in various roles since 2007. And as well as speaking on behalf of OBRA, I'm talking on behalf of a number of individuals. There's 4 key areas of the submission we'd like to focus on, being the Apito Bay Molochs, a dark sky reserve, and under 2 general headings, climate change and finance and development issues. Firstly, as far as the Molochs are concerned, we have tremendous community support for this facility. We did an online survey recently, and 150 out of 152 respondents supported retention of the Molochs. Basically, the curbside collection simply doesn't work at Apito over long weekends or indeed over any Sundays during the year. We had years ago, every time people leave, they leave bags out on the street, they get attacked by seagulls, and it really is an appalling mess. And the Molochs have been a major contributor to resolving that issue. Matapawa Bay doesn't actually have any curbside collection, so the Matapawa Bay residents are particularly focused on retaining the Molochs. And the facility is well located. It's not close to any residential sections, and it's also well looked after. We don't believe the cost is significant. We were told it's about $17,000 a year. And I think they provide a flexibility which really does suit the needs of the community. And I think we have the opportunity to actually sit down with council and work out what the most cost-effective and sensible way of approaching rubbish at Apito is. So from our perspective, while there are periods during the summer when the bi-weekly collection is necessary, there's long periods where it's not, and in other times of the year, then I think with the Molochs, a fortnight collection would be appropriate. So we've actually worked very closely with council officers for several years around this whole facility. We've had a very cooperative relationship, and we think that between us, we've managed it very well. We do need to keep a focus on making sure that we deal with long weekends effectively, because there can be a bit of a mess there, which usually the ratepayers, including myself, play a significant role in cleaning up. But we're confident we can manage that effectively. So really, we would like simply to sit down with council, work out what the most cost-effective way of dealing with the whole rubbish collection system at Apito is, and we're very confident that the best way would include the Molochs and the recycling facility. In terms of Dark Sky Reserve, we're really looking for council support for establishment of a dark sky community on the Kotuna Peninsula. We've carried out some initial investigations, and certainly that's viewed as feasible. There's strong support for the concept, and there's existing models. Tekapo is the often quoted one, which clearly demonstrate both the economic benefit and how to go about this. So this is not something that is it's challenging, but it's by no means impossible. We're concerned, like as with any environmental initiative, that any delay in initiating this will at best make the process more challenging, and at worst make it impossible. The primary requirement is around regulations on light, which are not onerous, but which need to be built in, and certainly the initial review of the existing lighting on the peninsula is that most of it is compliant already. So we're not talking about huge change here. And look, we are, the Kotuna Biosphere Group is engaged with some local council officers and to explore how this can be progressed. I guess the key thing we need is that as a community initiative, we're happy to do the hard yards and do what we can. But I think if it's going to take effect, we are going to need council support. So I'm really just flagging that and putting it on the table. We're happy to support it with both effort and funding, but we are going to be looking for council support on that. I've been sitting listening for an hour, and it was interesting to me to hear some of the other comments that are being made around climate change, which are very much supportive of our view. We support the relatively limited commitments around climate change in the long-term plan. We're concerned that we just don't see a leadership position from council, environment, and it was mentioned by one of the other presenters that it is the unique environment of the peninsula, which is the fundamental attraction for both visitors and permanent residents and all the businesses that support them. And so we believe that a proper focus and investment in this area really should be a priority. The environment suffers from significant pest and weed issues, unsustainable pressure on the marine environment. You'll all be aware of the rahui that the Apito community has been instrumental in establishing recently, and continuing degradation of our natural landscapes. And we believe that restoration and effective management of the natural environment has got to become the highest priority, because without that, we really have nothing else. And I think to me, it was very sad to see that there really isn't any focus on that. I think it was the lady from Forest and Bird who said there was no mention of biodiversity in the entire long-term plan. And I think it really is time that the council adopted an appropriate position on this and took a leadership position, which really is following the community rather than leading the community. We have established the Apito in conjunction with the Kotuna Biosphere Group, which is giving us cooperation across Kotuna, Otama and Apito now, a number of initiatives. We're funding those from private funds. We've raised $20,000 for the rahui. We've raised $10,000 for a pest-free Apito initiative. We've got teams of volunteers doing pest clearance, doing dune restoration. We believe the community are doing a lot, and we believe that is not being reflected in either council views, priorities, or leadership. And we would look forward to seeing that fundamentally changing. I think, again, one of the other speakers referred to the total focus in the long-term plan on growth and development without any regard to sustainability and the environment. And I think, I mean, really, globally, we surely can see now that you simply cannot look at one without looking at the other. And I really feel it's disappointing that those are not right at the top of the page. I mean, if climate change isn't the single biggest priority that the world is facing, then I don't know what is. And if it is, then why isn't it up the centre of your long-term plan? Why is that not the critical issue? We know that central government is increasingly looking beyond GDP to well-being and environmental issues, and we don't see any of that in the TCDC plan. And again, I just don't understand why there isn't an appropriate recognition being given to these things when everybody knows this is the most important thing facing every community everywhere in the world right now. Finally, on the financials, just a few comments. I'm afraid I find the reverse hockey stick projections for rate increases completely non-credible. I don't know if anybody has got personal experience of a reverse hockey stick financial projection actually being achieved. If so, I'd love to hear about it. In my business experience, I've certainly never seen it, and I've always treated any of projections of this nature with absolute suspicion. And I think when I dug into the proposed rate increases a little to see that, in fact, it's a 13.2% increase in the general and uniform annual charge next year, not the overall 8.4% one that is quoted. And I just wonder why we're looking at rate increases of this scale. Is this previous mismanagement? Is this catch up? Is this lack of investment infrastructure? These are questions. I don't know the answers, but I would certainly like to understand why we are being faced with increases. And then my final comment is that we've got a 78% increase next year in the targeted rate for rubbish and recycling, and over the 10-year period, a 380% increase. So I'm not sure what that's based on, unless it's some very substantial investment in recycling capabilities and a dramatic change to waste minimisation, which I would welcome. But I certainly find that one figure something which I would dearly like some further explanation on.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Paul? Questions for Tony?
Paul, on the subject of the monarchs, from other Peto residents, we've heard there could be a desire to do away with the blue bag collection, but maintain the monarch. So, in other words, the residents would take their own bags to the monarch, and then we'd come and pick them up from there. Where do you sit on that?
Tony, look, I don't think that's practical in that peak summer period for 2 or 3 weeks when there's the twice weekly collection. You know, I used to send out emails to people reminding them of the curbside collection so that they just lessened the pressure on the Molochs at that particular time. So I think there would be extended periods of the year where that would work. But I think I would just like to check. As you know, there's only a dozen or so permanent residents. I believe they all make use of the Moloch facilities at this time, and they're all capable of using them. I'd want to check with the permanent residents before making any specific commitments, but I do believe we could significantly reduce the curbside collection.
Yeah, thank you. Are there any other questions?
Thanks.
There being none, thank you, Paul. Appreciate it. We'll move on to the next submitter, which is page 227, Ross Stewart. Welcome, Ross.
Ross was supposed to join us on Tuesday, but he couldn't, so now we've moved into this time slot.
Ross, welcome. You want to unmute and put on your video, please? Hello.
Yeah. Good afternoon, councillors.
Thank you, Ross. Appreciate it. Far away.
Thank you. My name is Ross Stewart. I am a director of Sport Group Limited, RMS Surveyors, and we're the lead consultants for Kotuku Enterprises Limited, which are developing the last of the residential zoned land south of Whangamata Township. I have made a written submission, a general submission, and in respect of Council's infrastructure strategy, which councillors should have in front of them. And also attached to that submission was a concept plan for development of the balance of the Kotuku Enterprises land. I assume that all councillors will have that in front of them.
Yes.
The first stage of this development will comprise approximately 40 to 50 lots, which is about half of the area to be developed, and it's anticipated that this area will become available within 2 years. This will generate in the order of $600,000 to $700,000 of development contributions to council, and there are some issues that the developers consider need addressing before we go too far with this development. There's an issue with the water supply. There is some upgrading has happened in respect of water supply at the water supply reservoirs at the top of Pacific View Drive, but it probably not sufficient to service this additional development. There's an existing sewer pumping station to the south on Widdowson Avenue or Widdowson Drive. That's going to require upgrading. Also, it's requested that council give consideration to alternative access to the subdivision from the state highway via a roundabout or something similar at the intersection of the golf club entrance This would link the proposed development more closely with the existing township and would require negotiations with New Zealand Transport Agency and the adjoining landowner who owns the balance of the residential zoned land in this area. Also, it's suggested that council should make representations to New Zealand Transport Agency for further reduction in the speed limit in this area. The speed limit was recently reduced from 100 kilometres an hour to 70, but it's considered that because of the development in the area and the amount of traffic generated by the existing and future subdivision, that this speed limit should be further reduced to 50 kilometres an hour. So that's the end of my further submissions, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Right, okay, so have you been working with council on the issues for this subdivision?
On and off, yes. But we just want to just make councils aware that there are some long-term planning issues that need to be addressed.
Right, okay. That's good for a future discussion. Any questions of Ross? Terry?
Could I ask Terry Walker? Yes, the wastewater one I'm interested in. At the moment, you say, would the waste all go back to the Wooderson pumping station, or were you expecting a new pumping station down towards, say, the golf course area there?
Well, that hasn't been finalised yet, but it'll be one or the other.
One or the other. Okay. And I understand what you're saying about the speed. Absolutely important. Yeah, speed limit reduced.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions? There's been none. Thank you, Ross. Appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Right, our next submission, Joshua Kennings is not appearing. Bruce Wilson, is he with us? Bruce Wilson is not with us. Okay. Peter Ferrin, would you like to take the chair? Out front.
Do I need to sit through?
You're welcome to stand as you feel.
I must admit this personal touch here is a lot better than last year when we did like that. So this is thank you. There's a common thread of my submission, and that is that we all have to live within a budget, but you guys don't seem to understand what that means. At the moment, the rates and regional rates take something of the order of 25% of my pension, but your section of it is gradually sneaking up and up and up. Now, I don't get any extra money from the government, as you well know, and what little extra that we do get, you seem to be intent on grabbing. Now, some of the, I think I might add here just a little aside which is not covered in my submission, and that is that I'm also one of the people on the shore management panel. And I have to say that looking at some of your proposals, you're being a bit hasty, because until you dwell on what the shore management panel is going to come up with, and we have no idea at this stage, I think that there are some very, very telling discussions will have to go on regarding what is going to happen in coastal management. We've had the transit people here. They've given us no guarantee that they will even continue to sustain the state highway should sea levels rise. So, you know, there's a whole raft of issues that have yet to be determined. And so some of the proposals you've put in here are really very, very hasty. Like upgrading Pollen Street, when Pollen Street will go under ½ a metre of water at high tide. Are people going to want to keep Pollen Street running on that sort of condition? I don't know. That we have yet to find out. Now, I have lived for many years in Ngārimu Bay, where we attended to our own water supply and our own wastewater treatment. So I find it actually staggering that you seem to think that it's okay to spend an average of $12,000 per head. According to the census, there's 1,059 people live in Pūrere. Why on earth do you feel obliged to spend so much money on providing these people with water supply? It'd be cheaper to buy the water tank and a pump, each of them. There's only 500 dwellings there. Had you thought of doing that? Why are there millions of dollars spent on it?
We ask you the questions, Peter.
Well, I'm saying that it's a total extravagance to do what you're intending to do. And there are cheaper solutions. And
I can ask the previous Ministry of Health water quality standards.
You're saying that all these things are not the case at Naringu Bay, Thornton's Bay, Tipuru?
That's our responsibility. Nothing to do with us. We don't have a single water supply between Thames and Coromandel Town.
You don't?
No.
And yet, how many people have died of water poisoning? How many people have died up there due to poor quality water? How many people have ended up in
As
hospital?
I said, we asked you the questions.
I'm saying you do not need to supply water to Puriri. That should be there.
We've got about 2 minutes left.
Okay, so let's just move on then. The Thames pool replacement. The previous pool, the existing pool I should say, was funded by a Queen, I think it was, a Queen competition between business houses. The council didn't fund any of it. So why do you feel obliged to spend this vast amount of money for such a small piece of population of the Coromandel, mostly pensioners? So it's just over the top. I can't understand how it is that you guys need 7% when Hauraki can do it for 4.5%. Shouldn't you perhaps go and visit them and find out how they can be so well run in comparison? Isn't that a reasonable sort of a thing to do?
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Did you know that Hauraki's got twice the debt per ratepayer that Tcdc has approximately?
So?
Just ask the question.
It's what the end charges that is what affects us personally. And I know that all the money you've set aside for the replacement of our infrastructure has actually been borrowed. So we're going to have to go into debt just like the HTDC, aren't we? And apart from the fact that happy days, you may not even exist in 3 years' time. So there's another interesting thought, isn't it?
And the cost will be twice.
And the cost of the water and wastewater.
Well, it may well be. It may well be. Anyway, that's more or less what I have to say.
Thanks, Peter.
Any questions for Peter? Peter, how is the protection for the Taru beachfront going?
It's not.
Okay.
We have unfortunately, we have a group that is running that. We're having an AGM in a couple of weeks. They can be only said to be disappeared into the woodwork. So we need to get it going again.
Right.
There is all sorts of, this is one of the interesting things that I have found from the coastal management panel. We need to do something with the river here, because all the sand that comes down the river actually goes up the other coast, and it would be much more handy if it went up this coast. So if anybody can do a thing canoe and redirect the outflow from the White House, would be much appreciated.
It's a shame that the groins from your road kept up. But thank you very much, Peter. We'll move on to the next submitter, Claire Breen, who is with us on Teams. Claire, welcome. Page 760. So Claire, welcome.
Tēnā koutou katoa. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to speak this afternoon. I just want to make 2 points, one shorter than the other. One is I would be concerned from a health perspective if the rubbish in Whangamata in particular wasn't picked up on a regular basis over the summer period. If it goes to once a week, I think a previous submitter talked about what happens to the rubbish bags and the strewing of rubbish across the street. So I think on a variety of levels, that wouldn't be a good thing. The main thing I want to talk about this afternoon, though, is the proposed boardwalk at Whangamata. I'm not in favour of it being a must-do. And there is one aspect of that, though, that I'd like to focus a bit more on. A number of years ago, when the proposal was first mentioned, so about a decade ago, improved accessibility seemed to be a feature of some of the decision-making around that. And over the years, we've cycled back to improved accessibility at Whangamata. I'm not entirely convinced at the moment that the boardwalk meets that point. The drivers for building the boardwalk from an accessibility issue remain a little bit unclear. Some work has been done on improving accessibility, particularly for people with disabilities across the Coromandel. And a particular audit was done in 2014 of Whangamata. And that was part of the overall accessibility audit. It was part of the overall disability strategy undertaken by Tcdc at that time. The interesting thing about the accessibility audit that was taken in Whangamata was that it was informed by the public. There was a public meeting. And the report ultimately went to the community board. The audit is a really good source of information because it does highlight the question of accessibility for people with disabilities, including limited mobility. But it talks about things like building pathways here and there across Whangamata. And one of the things that I identified at the time was a priority for building a pathway terrace St. Patrick's Road. The accessibility audit does talk about access to the beach, and it does make recommendations in that regard, but it doesn't talk about it doesn't make mention of a boardwalk. So what it seems to be saying is that there needs to be improved accessibility to and at the various access points in Whangamata. As I said, some of these points are particularly notable because it draws from community consultation, and in particular disability stakeholders, so they contributed to the audit overall. So yes, I think there is definitely room for improving accessibility for people with limited mobilities and persons with disabilities in Whangamata. A previous speaker talked about, I guess, the rather, in my view, large sums of money that might be spent on building a boardwalk, and I would like to suggest something slightly different. There are more cost-effective ways of meeting that desire, and in fact it's a legal obligation to improve access for people with disabilities. So one suggestion that might be a bit cheaper would be installing beach mats at Whangamata. A slightly more expensive option, but still cheaper than a boardwalk, would be the installation of beach chairs, and they could be put in at the Whangamata Surf Club. And I think that would be a really good place to at least start thinking about improved accessibility for people with limited mobility and persons with disabilities. Because at the Surf Club, you've got the surf lifesavers there, there's a defibrillator there, and there's some work there already about access onto the beach. So I think it would be a good point, a good springboard to work on that. At that point, maybe to put beach chairs, beach wheelchairs, or a beach mat. I think some work has been done about improving beach access further along, I think around access point 15.
1 minute. 1 minute left.
1 minute. So that's a bit further away from the surf club. So I guess I would wrap up by saying I'd really like Whangamata Community Board, but also the council to think about the wider legal obligations and legal implications. I think it's really important to improve accessibility. I think it's really important. There are legal bases for improving accessibility for persons with disabilities. There are just different ways to do it that are more cost effective and provide better accessibility onto the beach.
Thank you, well done. Are there any questions for Claire? Thank you, Claire, we really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And we'll call on our next submitter. Is it Bruce Wilson? Thank you, Bruce. Page 240.
Where do you want me?
Thanks, Bruce.
In the hot seat.
Mastermind.
Mastermind.
As opposed to the
Mastermind. Yeah, no, I'm thinking the red chair galvans too. So I said it's wild.
I hope my time hasn't started now with all your.
No, you've got the full time.
Right, the clock is now ticking.
Thank you. Well, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Looking around the room, I think the most important numbers for you today, and in fact probably for the whole week, are 1,799 and 190. And that's because 1,799 is the number of written submissions on the LTP, and 190 was, I think, the number of people and groups wanting to present. So it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon. You will be feeling tired and overwhelmed. So you might like just to sit back, relax, forget about all those complicated presentations and proposals that you've had, and listen to something short, simple, and hopefully compelling. Caveat, I'm an accountant by training, so being exciting and interesting is often a challenge. So my name is Bruce Wilson, and I'm here in my capacity as the treasurer of the Seagull Centre to talk about rubbish. It seems to me that the council has some conflicting priorities. One is to meet the cost, to keep the cost of waste management down, and the other is to meet its obligations to the environment and under the Waste Management Act and all that regulation of which there is so much, to reduce, reuse, recycle, recover, and last and definitely least, dispose of waste. The Seagull submission is very simple. We and others, and I know there are some other submissions and other parties would be interested, are not from the government, and we are here to help you. So what have we got to offer, and why should you be interested? In truth, we don't really know. Now there's an admission, you'll give a submission, but anyway. We don't know at this stage because we don't have the information that the council has, and I suspect even the council is lacking in information. And we've only just started on our research, but we're sure we can help, as we have in the past, in a small way. We might start by asking a few questions like, how much would the amount of waste going to landfill be reduced if we cut the food waste and the building waste? Answer, sadly, no one really knows, but we think it's north of 50%. Whatever the figure, such a reduction in landfill would save the council money in waste disposal costs, in actual landfill costs. Unfortunately, it would cost more money to achieve this reduction. But maybe, just maybe, we could get to a break-even position and thereby reduce the environmental impact at no additional cost. As it happens, there's a proposal from the Thames Food Waste Group, and they're working on food waste. Happy coincidence. And Seagulls is looking into recycling building materials. So another question, and I'm new to this game. This is all pretty recent research, I have to tell you. As I said, I'm an accountant, I'm not an environmental expert. Another question is, what is happening to the world of waste disposal on the 1st of July 2021? I didn't know this until the other day. Answer, the New Zealand Waste Disposal Levy for Class 1 municipal landfill is going up from $10 to $20 a tonne, and to $60 a tonne in July 2024. And from 1st of July 2022, the levy will also be raised on construction and demolition waste, which is not the case at the moment. The government is working on a review of the Waste Minimisation Act, and you can guarantee that the Labour government, with the support of Greens, will make changes in this area. Technology for dealing with waste is changing, especially since China stopped taking a lot of our plastics. Change is inevitable and resistance is futile, as they're saying. The other thing I noticed is that the Council's Waste Management and Minimisation Plan is due for review by 2023. And we, Seagulls and others I know, would like to be part of it and part of the long-term plan. According to Waste Mins, that industry body, and this is really the key message that I'd like to leave with you guys today. This is a quote. Councils around the country who offer curbside recycling systems are faced with an array of choices as to what the best form of service is. Councils do not always have the technical knowledge to understand the longer-term impacts of their choices. The result is that often the lowest cost or most convenient services are the ones that get chosen. These do not always deliver the best long-term value, end quote. We think that the Council, ratepayers and the environment would benefit from input from the likes of Seagulls and other community-based groups. And we know there are a lot of those around. And they don't all have to be environmental. They can be the Thames Business Group, they could be community groups who have an interest in a good outcome. No doubt the Council will also want to seek advice from its waste contractor. That would be the smart thing to do. However, I apologise for the pun. However, we would urge you to remember when you do this that the contractor's primary goal is not reducing rates or reducing landfill, but it is quite legitimately to improve their own bottom line.
Radio, time's up.
You're kidding. 5 minutes. 5 minutes.
It's supposed to give a minute's
Okay, well, come on. So now I've signalled it.
Okay.
Wind it up.
Very quickly, I'm just involvement of community groups will have numerous benefits, including a shared vision with ratepayers to the environment, community buy-in, free labour, some not inconsiderable expertise, lots of enthusiasm, and savings for the Tcdc. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And can I just ask my question? When you were collating the number of submissions made and the number that wished to be heard, did you also collate the number, the dollar figure of all those things that were asked for?
No, I didn't. I don't think anyone could you?
Pardon?
I don't think anyone could they?
Oh, I'm sure they could, but it would come to a somewhat astronomical figure, I think. Everybody's asking for something.
Oh, we weren't. I beg your pardon. We weren't. We were offering to help you save money and find a better way.
Yes.
Yes. That's what you're there for. Well done.
Thank you.
I find it very hard to believe.
Is that just a Tuesday?
Anyway, any further submissions? Sorry, questions for Bruce?
No, it's good.
Yeah.
Thank you, Bruce.
Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon. Very good.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, Greg Leslie, unable to get hold of?
Yeah.
Can't get a hold of Greg, so I'm taking he's down. We've had Kate, Tim Evans. No one that's unavailable.
We asked 45 minutes earlier than
Yeah.
he was going to be here.
Greg has
Let's cut it
made
late.
It'll have to be at that time.
What time?
Greg,
That's all right, we'll just, and it's not available at all,
So potentially it could only just be Greg that we are waiting on.
and is he coming in?
Yes.
Is he? He doesn't want to just give us a call? No?
I can't get hold of him.
Okay, so what time is he due?
3:45.
Let's just. Okay, you're happy to wait for 45 minutes?
Yeah.
I'm just wondering if there's somebody that can do Ariana's job, and if you should do a little bit early, she's under a deadline.